So the reason this is at the front of my mind is because at the moment the Australian Boomers are playing 3 games in Melbourne as a warm-up to the FIBA World Cup, which is getting underway in less or about 10 days here. So I was watching, they played their first game the other night against Venezuela, who pretty poor opposition, no doubt. But I was watching Josh Giddey in action, and my goodness, it was disgusting. It was disgustingly good. Like, within 3 minutes, he basically should have been off the floor because it was flat out unfair that he was out there. It was the way he was picking apart the Venezuelan defense, which, like, let me reiterate, was nowhere near NBA quality, that's for sure. But the way he was picking apart the defense at his size with his playmaking ability was just ridiculous. It was totally unfair. He should not have been out there. And it just got me thinking again how, and this is a little bit different to the Wiseman ball situation. It's not a complete parallel. The Warriors had access to LaMelo Ball in the 2020 NBA draft. They didn't have access to Giddey because the Thunder got in and stole him at pick 6, which at the time was an incredible surprise. Like, I remember going into that draft, Giddey was seen as somewhere between 10 and 12, maybe around that mark. I think there was, even a week before the draft, there was the potential of him being available with the Warriors' second lottery pick, which was pick 14, which was obviously used on Moses Moody. But the closer we got, the higher he kind of rose. But even on draft night, there was still a thought that, okay, this guy will go between 10 and 12. And there was a thought that if he was to go pick 7 to the Warriors, that would be quite a reach. And so he was obviously taken by the Thunder at pick 6, and that was seen as probably one of the biggest surprises in the lottery that night. However, I actually interviewed Josh's dad, Warwick Giddey, who is an NBL legend over here in Australia. I interviewed him about 2 weeks after the draft, maybe. In fact, it might have been a little bit longer. It might have been post-Summer League where he injured his ankle. But anyway, regardless of what it was before the following NBA season. And he actually said to me that the Warriors had promised Josh that if he were available at pick 7, that they would take him. So that gives you an idea of the mindset of the Warriors heading into that draft, is that even though they had, Steph Curry and they had Jordan Poole, who we've got to remember at that time, Jordan Poole was coming off a season where he'd actually had a G League stint. It looked like a complete disaster. And then he returned from that G League stint and he was a completely different player. It was bizarre. He was a completely different player. And he was quite a productive player and part of the Warrior rotation, obviously, in the latter half of that season where they got things rolling a little bit and ended up losing in the play-in. But at that point, Jordan Poole was not quite Jordan Poole. Like, he was at a point where Warrior fans were really starting to take notice. It's like, hey, this guy could really be something. But he wasn't necessarily grabbing league-wide attention. And then obviously he did in the 2021-22 season, was one of the most improved players in the league. And within that kind of 12-month span, ended up becoming a 4-year, $120+ million player, which is quite a rise. But if we're going back to the 2021 NBA draft, that Jordan Poole was not the kind of rising star that we saw 12 months later. Anyway, so the Warriors were going to pick Josh Giddey if he was available, and he should have been available. He should have been available. As I said, the selection of him at 6 was quite a surprise. So, again, the Warriors didn't have access to him, but I'm watching Josh Giddey and I'm thinking, oof. I love Jonathan Kuminga. I'm really excited for him, but imagine having Josh Giddey on the Warriors right now in place of Chris Paul. Because right now, Josh Giddey, to me, is a better player than Chris Paul. Imagine having him feeding Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And I actually think with Giddey's size, 6'8", he's not the greatest defender right now, that's for sure. It's probably one of the weaknesses of his game, but he has got the size there to be able to compete, and he should get better. And with his rebounding ability, I mean, the guy has averaged 7.9 rebounds and 7.8 rebounds in each of his first 2 seasons. So with his rebounding ability, with the size, you could play Steph, and Klay together, and I think get away with it perfectly fine. In a way that you're not going to be able to get away with playing CP, Steph, and Clay for a huge amount of minutes next season. Now, obviously, we're going to see it a fair bit. We might see it 10 to 15 minutes a game, but I don't think you could play the three together for 25 minutes a game like you potentially could if Giddey was on the roster. And so I think this is a pivotal season for Jonathan Kuminga, just to kind of reassure Warrior fans that, hey, we didn't make a mistake here. And again, they didn't make a mistake because Giddey was not available. But if you look at who was taken at pick 8 and Franz Wagner, as I said, I love JK. I'm looking forward to what he can produce next season. But I think any non-bias fan would know that, hey, we'd much rather Franz Wagner on the team right now over Jonathan Kuminga. And I know it's hard to evaluate sometimes because the opportunity that JK has gotten with the Warriors is much less than what Josh Giddey has got with OKC or Franz has got with the Magic. But still, you can see Giddey and Wagner play, and you can see that the IQ, the playmaking, the way they move, it's a Warrior fit. It would be a seamless Warrior fit.